It started with a girl. Of course it did. That's how these things always begin. Someone beautiful who makes you ignore every red flag because your body can't tell the difference between love and danger. Her name was Jenna. I met her at the university library, of all places. I was 27, working as a part-time night janitor while finishing up a degree I was already starting to resent. She was sitting on the floor between two rows of psychology books, one leg crossed, the other stretched out lazily across the tile, like she owned the place. She looked like she'd wandered in from a film set. Dark hair, blunt fringe, chipped black nail polish, and Doc Martens that had clearly seen war. She was reading a book on criminal profiling. I made some dumb joke about the FBI recruiting from aisle 9, and she laughed like I was the first person who'd ever made her smile. We started talking. Then we started texting. Within a week, she was at my apartment with a 6-pack of cheap beer and a stack of serial killer documentaries she'd burned onto a USB stick. I thought it was quirky, a little intense maybe, but I was into it. She had that thing, like she was always watching, always studying people the way a cat studies a wounded bird. Not out of empathy, but interest. Once, while we were watching a documentary, she looked at me and said, "I like people who don't flinch. You're rare." I laughed at the time. Now I can't get that sentence out of my head. She'd ask weird questions sometimes like, how long do you think someone could survive being buried alive if they didn't panic? Or, if you were going to disappear someone, like make them vanish without trace, what's your move? Stuff that felt like half a joke but never fully landed as one. I chalked it up to curiosity. She was into forensic psychology, obsessed with understanding the worst in people. I didn't realize how much of that was just her reflecting herself. 3 months in, she invited me to meet her friends. "They're not really social media people," she said. "Kind of off-grid, but cool. They've got a place up north, near the woods. We usually hang there on weekends. Fires, drinks, no cell signal." Sounded like a break from everything I hated. I said yes, without a second thought. We left Friday afternoon in her beat-up Chevy Tahoe. The back was loaded with beer, a few blankets, and a shovel. "For fire pit ashes," she said with a wink. I didn't ask. Somewhere between mile marker 142 and a town that didn't exist on Google Maps, the signal dropped. The road narrowed to a dirt path flanked by crooked pine trees. By the time we arrived, it was nearly dark. The cabin, if you could call it that, was more like an abandoned ranger's station. One story, sagging roof, boarded windows that looked like they'd been torn open and hammered shut a dozen times. There were 3 people waiting, 2 guys and 1 woman. They didn't smile. Not really. The taller guy, bald, wide-shouldered, tattooed hands, just nodded and handed me a beer. The other guy was pale and twitchy, eyes flicking around like he expected someone to lunge from the trees. The woman was silent. She just stared at me like she was already memorizing my face. "Don't worry," Jenna whispered, touching my back. "They just take a bit to warm up." We built a fire behind the cabin in a pit that looked like it had been used for more than wood. The earth around it was darker, sunken. I convinced myself it was from old ash. We drank, laughed, talked about nothing in particular, but something was off. Their jokes didn't land right. They asked me weird personal things. Did I have family nearby? Had I told anyone where I was going this weekend? Did I believe in near-death experiences? Around midnight, I started to feel heavy. Not drunk, just slow. My tongue was thick. My arms didn't respond the way they should have. I thought I'd had maybe 3 beers, but it hit like 15. "I think I need to lie down," I muttered. Jenna smiled. It wasn't the same smile I'd seen at the library. It was cold, patient. "You're fine," she said. "Just rest your eyes. We'll take care of you." That's when I knew. That was the first moment I realized I wasn't going to wake up where I fell asleep. When I woke up, I couldn't breathe. Not in the way people say when they're anxious or scared. I mean, I literally couldn't fill my lungs. My throat was dry, like I'd swallowed dust, and the air felt used. Thin, like someone else had breathed it first and left me the scraps. I tried to sit up, and that's when my forehead smacked solid wood just inches above me. It was pitch black, a kind of darkness I didn't know existed before then. Not just the absence of light, but the smothering presence of something else, something that pushed down on me from all sides. My arms were pinned close, elbows jammed into my ribs, my legs bent at the knees, forced into a position too tight for any grown man. Every breath I took came back damp and warm, like the air was sweating with me. I wasn't in a cabin, I wasn't in a room, I was in a box. The smell hit me next. Damp earth, old wood, sweat, and something sharper. A chemical tang that stung the back of my throat. I don't know how long I lay there frozen, my mind refusing to catch up with what my body already knew. Buried. They had buried me alive. When the panic hit, it came like a seizure. I screamed first, raw and hoarse, more out of instinct than hope. The sound was pathetic, swallowed instantly by the wood and dirt. Then I started kicking, punching, headbutting the inside of the box. My knuckles cracked against the lid. I felt splinters jam under my fingernails. Blood smeared across the ceiling. Nothing moved, no give, no echo, no sign anyone heard me. I tried to think, tried to remember what I'd read, what I'd seen in movies. How long could someone survive in a box like this? How deep had they buried me? Was there air? Would I suffocate first, or just go mad waiting? There was no flashlight, no food, no water, only me, the coffin, and the weight of the earth pressing down like a silent hand. I clawed at the wood again until I couldn't feel my fingertips. I screamed Jenna's name. I cursed her, begged her, promised anything, but there was only silence. Then, a sound, muffled, faint, but unmistakable. Laughter, above me, not loud, not hysterical, but controlled, deliberate. It drifted down like the dirt itself was giggling. I slammed my fists against the lid again, howling. "Let me out, please!" I sobbed the words until I couldn't hear myself anymore, and then a voice, Heron software, calm. "You're still fighting, that's good." Then more laughter, this time from multiple voices, distant but close enough to hear. It wasn't the laughter of people enjoying a joke. It was clinical, like scientists observing a lab rat trying to chew off its own foot. I lost time after that. Hours, maybe more. I passed out at some point, lack of oxygen maybe, or sheer exhaustion. When I came to, my mouth was lined with dirt. My tongue was cracked and stuck to the roof of my mouth. My nails were torn, one had snapped completely off. I couldn't scream anymore. My throat was raw, every breath felt shallower than the last. That's when the hallucinations began. I heard scratching, like something else was buried with me. Tiny claws skittering across the wood just above my head. I felt movement near my feet. A shifting, like something crawling up my leg. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there. I started to sob again, quietly this time, defeated. And then, a sound I'll never forget. The creak of shifting dirt, not from above, from the side. A collapse maybe. Rain, a weight. I didn't know. But the earth shifted. Some light, some weight lessened at the top, just slightly. I pressed both palms against the lid and pushed. Nothing. But then, again, that creak, followed by something impossible. A beam of light, thin, like a hairline fracture in the dark. A crack in the lid above my face. I blinked, coughed, sobbed all at once. Light meant air. Air meant a chance. I pushed again, this time with what little was left of my strength. The lid groaned. Dirt slid down through the crack and into my mouth, my eyes, my nose, but I didn't stop. I pushed until my elbows gave out, until I felt something shift again, wood splintering, not much, but enough. And then I heard it. A voice, low, curious, still alive. It wasn't Jenna, it was someone else, and they didn't sound surprised. The voice was close now. I couldn't tell if it was above or beside me, only that it was getting louder. I tried to speak, but all that came out was a dry croak, like someone dragging sandpaper across broken glass. Then there was more noise, movement, footsteps, the scrape of something metal against the earth. Shovels. digging. A second voice joined in, and then a third. I didn't understand what they were saying. The words blurred, like my brain couldn't hold on to them. But one thing was clear. They weren't panicking. They weren't shouting or calling for help. They were calm, methodical. Like this wasn't a rescue. Like they already knew I was here. I thought, for one terrifying moment, that they were back, that Jenna and her friends had returned to finish what they started, or maybe to unearth me just to watch what was left. But then the lid of the coffin creaked again, and light spilled in, blinding, golden, and sharp. I flinched so hard my back spasmed. A hand reached down. It was a man, late 40s, heavy-set, wearing a neon orange windbreaker caked in mud. His face was unreadable. He didn't ask if I was okay, didn't tell me I was safe. He just said, "Don't move," and grabbed me under the arms. "Remember to like, share, and subscribe." They pulled me out like dead weight. My legs didn't work. My vision pinwheeled. When I hit the cold air, I threw up dirt and blood and something that tasted like rusted pennies. The man laid me on the ground and knelt beside me. "You were lucky," he said flatly, as if that word meant anything here. "The rain last night exposed part of the grave. Thought it was a dead dog or something. Then we saw your hand." I turned my head slowly. There were 2 others standing nearby, both in hiking gear. One was a woman holding a phone, recording everything. The other was already pulling a tarp over the coffin like they wanted to hide it again. "Call the sheriff," the woman said, but the man shook his head. "No service here. We'll take him to the ranger station." They loaded me into the back of a pickup truck like a body bag. No questions, no comfort, just silence and the sound of tires rolling over wet gravel. It took another hour before we reached a building with actual lights, where I was handed off to paramedics who looked more confused than concerned. One of them whispered to the others as they checked my vitals, "How the hell is he even alive?" At the hospital, the questions started, fast and hard. Name, age, last memory, people involved. I could barely speak, but I tried. I told them about Jenna, about the cabin, her friends, everything I could remember. They nodded, took notes, but something in their faces told me they didn't believe me. Or worse, they did, but they'd heard it before. The police found the site, the coffin, the fire pit, but no Jenna, no friends, no Tahoe. Even my phone was gone. They ran her name through databases. Nothing. No records. I showed them a photo I'd taken of her. Facial recognition returned 0 matches. It was like she didn't exist, but she did. And I was only the beginning. The detectives didn't say it out loud, but I could tell what they were thinking. Trauma, delusion. Maybe I'd wandered into the woods and built some elaborate psychotic break to explain it. But then why the coffin? Why the laughter? Why did one of the hikers say, "still alive," like it was part of the test? They kept me in the hospital 5 days. When I was discharged, I had nowhere to go. My apartment had been broken into, nothing taken, but everything moved. I didn't even remember telling Jenna where I lived. I moved in with my brother. It lasted a week. I screamed every night, not talking in my sleep, screamed, loud enough that his neighbor banged on the wall 3 nights in a row. Eventually he told me he couldn't do it. I didn't blame him. I wouldn't want to live with me either. Now I live alone. No roommates, no basement. I won't even go near a cellar. I keep lights on 24/7. There's a crowbar under my bed and a GPS tracker sewn into my jacket. Every time I go to sleep, I stare at the ceiling for a few minutes just to make sure it's still there. But here's the worst part. I never saw Jenna again. Not directly, but I've seen her in photos. Once at a street fair in Oregon, blurred in the background behind a food stand. Once in a hiking vlog from Colorado, sunglasses on, face turned half away. And once, this one made me vomit, in a live stream from a missing persons charity event. A woman in a hood passed the camera. Pause it at the right frame, brighten it a little, and there she is. She looks straight at the lens. She sees me. She knows I'm watching. 3 weeks ago, I got a package. no return address. Just a flash drive. I opened it. One file, a video. It was me, inside the box. From a camera mounted in the coffin. I was screaming, panicking, begging, and you could hear them laughing. At the end, Jenna leans into the frame and speaks into the lens. Subject remains defiant. Duration, 14 hours, 31 minutes. Emotional response, extreme. Hallucinations observed. Extraction initiated prior to total system failure. And then she smiles. Not cruel, not even proud. Just satisfied, like a teacher closing a folder, like a researcher logging another successful trial. I've watched that clip more than I should, not because I want to relive it, because I need to understand what I am to them, because she didn't work alone. The others at the fire, the ones who found me, the silence from the police, the hospital that treated me like they'd seen this before. It's a pattern, a shape just beneath the surface. They're not killing people, they're recording them, testing them, collecting us like data. Some call it a myth, some call it a cult. I found one reference on a message board, the Black Box Club. And yesterday I found a note on my doorstep. No envelope, 5 words, printed in block letters. Subject showed excellent long-term response. I don't know what's next, but I know it's not over. So if you ever meet someone like Jenna, charming, curious, intense, and she asks you what your greatest fear is, or how long you think you could survive if you were buried alive, don't flirt, don't joke. Don't trust her, because she doesn't want to kill you. She wants to keep you, and bury you just deep enough to remember. Like, share and subscribe before they find you too.